The tap of Amara's white cane echoed through Grafton Academy's polished hallways, drawing stares and snickers from students who'd never known a day of hardship. At 16, she carried herself with quiet dignity, dark glasses hiding eyes that had seen nothing since childhood. Chase Williams spotted her immediately. The perfect target. Rich, untouchable, and cruel. He orchestrated the first accident by lunch. Orange juice spilled down her pristine white blouse. Oops, he smirked, waiting for tears that never came. What puzzled him was her stillness, the almost imperceptible tilt of her head, the way she seemed to sense movements no blind person should detect. Chase didn't know that each night, Amara trained blindfolded at a local dojo, breaking boards and taking down opponents with terrifying precision. He couldn't see the black belt hidden in her closet, or understand the years of discipline that had forged her into something powerful. Chase and his friends had declared war on the wrong girl, and they were about to learn just how clearly Amara could see. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The morning. Sun cast long shadows across the pristine grounds of Grafton Academy as Amara James took her first steps onto campus. With each tap of her white cane against the cobblestone path, she mapped the unfamiliar territory in her mind. Dark glasses shielded her unseeing eyes from the world, but they couldn't shield her from the whispers that followed. That's her. The new transfer, someone muttered as Amara passed by a group of students lounging on the lawn. Diversity admission, another voice replied with unmistakable disdain. Amara's face remained impassive, her posture straight and dignified despite the weight of 20 pairs of eyes tracking her movement. At 16, she had perfected the art of appearing unbothered. The administrative office smelled of lemon polish and old books. Amara stood patiently as Mrs. Harrison, the secretary, fumbled through paperwork. I'm not entirely sure how to... Well, with your condition, Mrs. Harrison's voice trailed off. I can find my way if you provide verbal directions, Amara said, her voice clear and measured. I've memorized the campus layout from the tactile map my father helped me with. Oh, that's impressive. The surprise in Mrs. Harrison's voice was all too familiar to Amara. 20 minutes later, she was seated in her first class, Language Arts with Ms. Elridge. Class, we have a new student joining us today, Ms. Elridge announced without enthusiasm. Amara James has transferred from Washington High. Please make her feel welcome. Amara nodded politely in the direction of the teacher's voice. As she settled into her desk, she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. I'm Yasmin, whispered a warm voice with the slightest accent. If you need help with anything, just ask. Before Amara could respond, a sharp male voice cut through the air from across the classroom. Teacher's pet making friends with the charity case? The voice belonged to Chase Williams. Even without seeing him, Amara could picture the smirk that accompanied those words. The confident, entitled tone told her everything she needed to know. Ms. Elridge cleared her throat. Chase, that's enough. But her admonishment lacked conviction. Amara noted the hesitation, the subtle protection extended to Chase rather than to her. It wasn't new. Teachers at elite schools rarely challenged the children of their most generous donors. As class ended, Amara organized her specially marked folders with practiced efficiency. The next voice that approached her was different, softer, with an unusual cadence. Your organizational system is fascinating. Color-coded tabs with textured markers, highly efficient. The boy didn't introduce himself. I'm Sammy, Yasmin explained, now standing beside them. He's a coding genius, not great with social niceties. Unnecessary preamble wastes time, Sammy replied matter-of-factly. Amara smiled for the first time that day. I appreciate efficiency. The cafeteria was a cacophony of sounds, smells, and voices. Amara navigated the space carefully, her cane sweeping in practiced arcs before her. She had just received her tray when a hand touched her elbow. Need some help finding a seat? The voice was smooth, calculated. Chase Williams. Every instinct in Amara's body tensed, but her face remained neutral. I can manage, thank you. Insist, Chase said, taking her tray. It's the gentlemanly thing to do. What happened next unfolded in slow motion. The deliberate tilt of the tray, the splash of cold orange juice down the front of Amara's white blouse, the sudden hush that fell over the nearby tables. "Oops," Chase said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Clumsy me." Laughter erupted around them, not from everyone, but from enough students to form a chorus of cruelty. Amara stood perfectly still, juice dripping down her clothes. With deliberate calm, she reached into her bag and pulled out a packet of tissues. She began to dab at the stain, her movements methodical. "Aren't you going to cry about it?" asked a new voice, one of Chase's friends. "Why would I?" Amara replied evenly. "It's just juice." Her response seemed to confuse them. The laughter died down, replaced by uncertain murmurs. "I'm Logan," the second boy said, extending his hand before realizing his mistake and awkwardly pulling it back. "Chase's friend. Sorry about your shirt." "No, you're not," Amara replied without anger, just stating a fact. She turned and walked away, her cane tapping a steady rhythm against the floor. Behind her, Chase whispered to his friends, "Something's off about her." She didn't even flinch. "Maybe she's used to worse," suggested the third boy in their group. "Brent, or maybe," Chase said with growing irritation, "she thinks she's better than us." As Amara walked away, her mind traveled back 7 years, to the day everything changed. She had been 9 years old, sitting in a doctor's office with her parents, listening to words that would redefine her life. Rare genetic condition, progressive, vision loss, irreversible. Her mother had cried. Her father, a military man who had never shown weakness, had gone silent in a way that scared her more than any shouting could have. 3 months later, as darkness closed in around her world, her father took her to a small dojo on the edge of town. "Amara," he had said, his voice gruff with emotion, "you're going to learn to see without your eyes." Sensei Park had been intimidating at first, a strict Korean-American man with a voice like stone and hands like iron. He had no special program for blind students. No gentle introduction. "You will train twice as hard," he had told her. "You will fall twice as often, and you will rise twice as strong." The first year had been brutal. Bruises, frustration, and tears marked every session. But slowly, like water shaping stone, Amara began to change. Her hearing sharpened. Her sense of spatial awareness expanded. Her balance became uncanny. By 13, she could navigate the dojo blindfolded, detecting the movement of other students by the displacement of air, the subtle shift of weight on the floor, the rhythm of their breathing. True strength, Sensei Park had told her one day after she had successfully defended against 3-sided opponents, is in silence, in patience, in letting your enemy believe you are weak until the moment you prove otherwise. The memory dissolved as Yasmin caught up to her in the hallway. "I can't believe Chase did that," Yasmin said, handing Amara a clean blouse from her gym bag. "What a jerk." "It's fine," Amara replied. "Not my first juice spill. You know who they are, right? Chase Williams, Logan Taylor, and Brent Cooper? Their parents practically own half the town. Chase's dad is on the school board. Doesn't make them untouchable," Amara said quietly. "Around here it kind of does." Yasmin sighed. "Ms. Elridge saw everything and did nothing. She never does when it comes to them." After school, Amara waited on the front steps for her father. The campus had emptied, leaving her in peaceful silence, until footsteps approached, 3 distinct patterns that she had already memorized. "Still here, charity case?" Chase's voice had lost its earlier pretense of politeness. Amara didn't respond. "I'm talking to you," Chase said, stepping closer. "I heard you," Amara replied calmly. "I just didn't find a question worth answering." Logan snickered, earning a sharp look from Chase. "You know," Chase continued, circling her, "most new kids figure out the social order here pretty quick. You seem to be struggling with the concept." "Social order," Amara repeated, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Fascinating terminology." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means high school is temporary, so is your power." Chase's face flushed with anger. You think you're smart? Let's see how smart you feel by the end of the week. As they walked away, Brent whispered, "Dude, she's blind. Maybe we should ease up." "That's exactly why we shouldn't," Chase replied. $20 says I can make her cry before Friday. You're on, Logan agreed with a laugh. What they didn't see was the slight tilt of Amara's head as their voices carried back to her, her enhanced hearing catching every word of their bet. The next day, Amara navigated a gauntlet of whispered insults and cruel jokes. Someone moved chairs into her path between classes. In the cafeteria, a group of girls loudly discussed how some people use disabilities for attention. Through it all, Amara maintained her composure, her face a mask of serenity that only fueled Chase's growing obsession with breaking her. And as she walked to her final class, she heard a subtle movement, something small landing on the floor in her path. Several students gasped, "A rubber snake." Amara stepped over it without hesitation, without even breaking her stride. Then she did something unexpected. She turned slightly toward where Chase stood watching, her face angled directly at him as if she could see the smirk on his face. For just a moment, Chase felt a chill run through him. "Did she just—" Logan began. "No way," Chase cut him off. "Lucky guess." But the seed of doubt had been planted. The rubber snake incident marked a turning point, as whispers spread through the school about the new blind girl who seemed unfazed by the infamous Chase Williams. Amara's daily routine at Grafton Academy settled into a rhythm of silent endurance. Chase and his friends escalated their tactics. They left tacks on her chair, which somehow she always detected before sitting. They recorded themselves mimicking her walk with the white cane and played it loudly when she passed. They created a fake social media account with her name and filled it with pathetic pleas for friendship. Through it all, Amara's calm remained unbroken. She neither complained to teachers nor engaged with her tormentors. Her silence was not submission, it was strategy. "I don't get it," Yasmin said one day as they studied in the library. "How do you stay so composed?" Amara's fingers traced the raised dots of her Braille textbook. "Reaction is what they want. Why give them the satisfaction?" Sammy, who had been silently coding beside them, looked up from his laptop. "Psychological warfare. By refusing to provide the expected emotional response, you're disrupting their reward cycle." Amara smiled. "Something like that." The following day in gym class, the students were playing dodgeball, a game Amara was usually exempted from. She sat on the bleachers, listening to the squeaks of rubber-soled shoes against the polished floor, the thud of balls hitting bodies, the grunts and cheers of her classmates. She didn't see Brent whisper something to Chase, didn't see Chase nod, with a malicious grin. But she heard the subtle shift in movement, the slight pause in Chase's breathing as he prepared to throw. The ball came sailing toward her from behind, where no blind person should have been able to detect it. Without turning, Amara tilted her head slightly to the left. The ball whizzed past, missing her by inches. The gym fell silent. "No way," someone whispered. "Did you see that? Is she really blind?" Chase stood frozen, ball in hand, staring at Amara with newfound suspicion. After school, Amara made her way to a small strip mall 6 blocks from campus. At the end of the row of shops stood Park's Dojo, a modest establishment with a worn sign and windows covered in tournament announcements. Inside, the air smelled of sweat and discipline. Amara moved confidently through the space, no longer using her cane, navigating by memory and sound to the women's changing room. When she emerged, she wore a black jai with a matching belt. Sensei Park, a stern-faced man in his 50s, nodded in acknowledgement. "You're late, Amara." "School issues," she replied simply. "Excuses don't strengthen your stance." His voice was firm but not unkind. "Begin your warm-up. Ryan will be your sparring partner today." Ryan, a senior from a neighboring school, looked uncertainly at Amara. "Sensei, are you sure? Are you questioning my judgment?" Sensei Park interrupted, sharply. "No, Sensei. Sorry, Sensei." "Then begin." What followed was not a training session for a disabled student, but a rigorous test of skill. Amara and Ryan bowed to each other. Then Sensei Park handed Amara a blindfold. Not that she needed it, but it was part of the training ritual. The sparring match began cautiously, with Ryan holding back. But as Amara effortlessly blocked his first few strikes, his competitive instinct took over. He attacked more aggressively, using combinations that would challenge any skilled opponent. Amara deflected each strike, her movements fluid and precise. When Ryan overextended on a roundhouse kick, she captured his leg, swept his supporting foot, and took him down to the mat with controlled force. The other students, who had stopped their own practice to watch, broke into spontaneous applause. Ryan, though winded, nodded with respect as Amara helped him to his feet. "Well executed," Sensei Park said, which from him was high praise indeed. "Both of you, 5 laps around the dojo, then kata practice." As Amara ran, her mind was already back at school, calculating her next moves in a different kind of combat. The next morning, Sammy approached her before first period, clutching what looked like a small electronic device. "I made something for you," he said without preamble, placing it in her hand. "An audio mapping device. It emits ultrasonic pulses and translates the echoes into audio cues through this earpiece. Like echolocation, but technologically enhanced." Amara ran her fingers over the sleek device, genuinely touched by the gesture. "This is incredible, Sammy. Thank you. It will improve your navigational efficiency by approximately 37.8%. Amara hesitated, then handed it back. "I appreciate this, more than you know, but I already see more than you think." Sammy tilted his head, studying her with newfound curiosity. "Fascinating," he murmured before walking away, lost in thought. During lunch, Yasmin slid into the seat beside Amara, her voice low and urgent. "I overheard Brent talking to some guys in chemistry. They're planning something for the assembly tomorrow, some kind of humiliation stunt involving you." "What kind of stunt?" Amara asked, continuing to eat her apple with apparent unconcern. "Something about fake braille cards and getting you on stage under false pretenses. I couldn't hear everything." Amara nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for telling me. Aren't you worried? Maybe we should tell Principal Weston." "And have him do what exactly? Give Chase a stern talking to while his father threatens to withdraw his donation to the new science wing?" Amara's voice held no bitterness, just a realistic assessment of the situation. "No, sometimes you have to handle things yourself." The all-school assembly the next day was mandatory, officially to discuss academic achievements but really to showcase donor-funded improvements to the campus. Amara sat with Yasmin and Sammy near the back of the auditorium. Halfway through the principal's speech, Ms. Elridge approached Amara with an overly bright smile. "Amara, dear, you've been selected to read a special message to the student body. We have it prepared in Braille for you." Amara could hear Chase and his friends snickering several rows away. The trap was obvious. "That's very kind," she said, standing smoothly. "Lead the way." As she walked to the stage, guided by Ms. Elridge, whispers rippled through the audience. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, waiting for the spectacle. Principal Weston handed her what was supposed to be a Braille document. Her sensitive fingers immediately detected the problem. The dots were random, meaningless patterns pressed into the paper, not actual Braille at all. "Whenever you're ready, Ms. James," the principal said, stepping back. Amara stood at the podium, her face serene. She set the fake Braille cards aside and straightened her shoulders. "I'd like to share something I wrote yesterday," she began, her voice clear and confident. "It's called Seeing." The auditorium fell silent as Amara began to recite from memory. "They think darkness is my prison, that I live in a world without color or form. They pity the girl who cannot see the sun, not knowing I feel its warmth on my skin. They think blindness means blindness to truth, that I cannot perceive their whispered cruelties. But I hear the smirk in their voices, the hollow echo of their laughter. I see more than they know. The fear behind their mockery, the weakness in their need to diminish others, the blindness in their seeing eyes. True vision comes from within. And in the darkness, I have found my light." As the last words hung in the air, the auditorium remained completely silent. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single person began to clap. Others joined, the applause spreading like ripples in a pond until most of the student body was on their feet. Amara nodded once in acknowledgement, then made her way back to her seat without assistance, her cane tapping a steady rhythm on the floor. Chase sat rigid in his seat, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. The stunt had backfired spectacularly, transforming what should have been Amara's humiliation into a moment of triumph. "This isn't over," he whispered to Logan and Brent. "Not even close." But something had shifted in the school's social ecosystem. As Amara walked the halls that afternoon, several students she'd never spoken to before greeted her by name. A girl from her math class asked if she could sit with Amara at lunch the next day. The captain of the debate team approached her about joining. "You've disrupted the hierarchy," Sammy observed, as they waited for their rides after school. "Fascinating to witness." "People respect authenticity," Yasmin added. "And courage." Amara shrugged. "I just spoke my truth." That evening, as Amara worked on homework in her bedroom, her father knocked on the door. "The school called today," he said without preamble. "Something about an impromptu poetry reading at the assembly?" Amara smiled slightly. "It wasn't in the program." James Marshall, a former Marine with the build to prove it, sat on the edge of her bed. "Are those boys still giving you trouble?" "Nothing I can't handle." "That's not what I asked, Amara," she sighed, setting aside her Braille reader. "They're just insecure kids with too much money and not enough consequences. That doesn't give them the right to target you." His voice held the controlled anger of a man who had spent a lifetime learning to channel his emotions. "I could speak to the principal." "Dad, please don't. It would only make things worse." Amara reached out, finding his hand with unerring accuracy. "I've got this. Trust me." He squeezed her hand. "I always have." The next morning, Amara arrived at school to find an atmosphere of tension. As she walked to her locker, conversations hushed when she passed, only to resume in fervent whispers behind her. Yasmin found her before first period, her voice tight with anger. "Chase hacked into the school's student records. He's showing people your address, your medical history, everything." Amara's expression didn't change, but her hand tightened slightly on her cane. "Was that supposed to scare me?" "He's trying to prove you don't belong here, that your family can't afford the tuition without special assistance. And that would make me less worthy of being here." "Of course not," Yasmin exclaimed. "But you know how some of these trust fund kids think." Amara nodded slowly. "My father will need to be informed. This crosses a different line." That afternoon, James Marshall arrived at Grafton Academy in his Marine Corps veteran cap and a perfectly pressed shirt. His imposing figure drew stares. As he strode through the halls to the principal's office, the meeting lasted 45 minutes. No one knew exactly what was said, but Principal Weston's secretary reported that Mr. Marshall's voice never rose above a conversational level, which somehow made it all the more intimidating. When he emerged, he found Amara waiting outside. "Everything okay, Dad?" she asked. "It will be," he replied simply. Then more quietly, "The truth will do the work, Amara. Remember what Sensei taught you. Let them underestimate you. It's their mistake to make." That night, as darkness fell, Chase and Brent sat in Chase's expensive sports car across the street from the modest two-story home where Amara lived with her father. "This is stupid," Brent muttered. "What are we even doing here?" "Reconnaissance," Chase replied, never taking his eyes off the house. "I want to know what her deal is. No one makes a fool of me and gets away with it. Your dad already said the school can't do anything about her records being leaked. Can we just—" Chase held up a hand, silencing him. "Look." In the backyard of the house, illuminated by security lights, Amara had emerged wearing workout clothes. Without her cane or glasses, she moved with startling confidence across the lawn. Reaching a large oak tree, she began to climb, effortlessly finding handholds in the darkness, scaling the massive trunk with the grace of someone who could see perfectly well. "What the hell?" Brent whispered. Chase leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I knew something was off about her. She's faking it. Faking being blind, that's crazy, man. Is it? Did you see how she dodged that ball in gym? How she always knows when we're coming? How she climbed that tree like she could see every branch?" Chase started the car engine. "Tomorrow, we find out the truth. As they drove away, neither noticed. Amara perched in the tree, her head tilted slightly in their direction, listening to the sound of their car long after it had disappeared from sight. The chemistry lab buzzed with activity as students paired off for the day's experiment. Amara worked with Yasmin, her fingers expertly identifying the equipment by touch and shape. Add 15 milliliters of the sodium hydroxide solution, Yasmin read from the instructions. Amara carefully measured the liquid, her movements precise and confident. Across the room, Chase watched her with narrowed eyes. "Today's the day we prove she's faking," he whispered to Brent, who looked increasingly uncomfortable with their escalating vendetta. "I don't know, man. What if she's just good at being blind?" Chase scoffed. "Nobody's that good. Blind people can't dodge balls. They can't see or climb trees in the dark." Their whispered conversation was interrupted by Mr. Parker, the science teacher. "Less talking, more titrating, gentlemen." As the class progressed, Brent positioned himself near the supply cabinet, waiting until Mr. Parker stepped out to help, a student in the hallway. With a quick glance to ensure no one was watching, he bumped into a shelf, sending a beaker of clear liquid tipping toward Amara and Yasmin's workstation. The chemical spill happened quickly. The beaker tipped, the liquid splashed outward in an arc toward the girls. Amara's head tilted slightly at the sound of sloshing liquid. In one fluid motion, she extended her cane, redirecting the spill away from Yasmin and herself. The liquid splashed harmlessly onto the floor instead of onto them. Mr. Parker rushed back in at the commotion. "What happened?" "Chemical spill, sir," another student reported, but Amara stopped it with her cane. Mr. Parker looked at Amara with surprise. "That was remarkable reaction time, Ms. James. Well done." Yasmin squeezed Amara's arm. "Thanks. That would have ruined my favorite sweater at the very least." Amara shrugged casually. "I heard it falling." Across the room, Chase and Brent exchanged looks. "Heard it?" Brent whispered. "Before it even spilled?" The incident in the chemistry lab became the latest in a growing list of Amara's inexplicable abilities that had the student body buzzing. By lunchtime, the whispers had evolved from skepticism about her blindness to a grudging respect for her capabilities. "Superhearing," one student theorized. "My cousin's blind, and he can tell what color M&M I'm holding just by the way it rattles in my hand." "Maybe she has like a sixth sense," suggested another. Chase listened to these theories with growing frustration. His status as the school's untouchable alpha was being eroded by a girl who refused to be intimidated or humiliated. After the final bell, Principal Weston called Chase and Brent into his office. The room was oppressively silent as they took seats across from his imposing desk. "Gentlemen," Principal Weston began, his tone carefully neutral, "there was an incident in the chemistry lab today that Mr. Parker found concerning." "It was an accident," Brent said quickly. "Indeed." The principal's gaze moved between them. "Just like the assembly incident was an accident? And the rubber snake? And the leaked student records?" Chase maintained his practiced look of innocence. "I'm not sure what you're implying, sir." "I'm not implying anything, Mr. Williams. I'm stating facts." Principal Weston leaned forward. "Ms. James has been at Grafton Academy for less than 2 weeks, and in that time, she has experienced an unusual number of accidents." "Maybe she's just clumsy," Chase suggested with a smirk. "Or maybe," the principal countered, "certain students are having difficulty adjusting to a classmate who's different from what they're accustomed to." Chase's father sat on the school board. His family's name was on the recently renovated library. These facts hung unspoken in the air between them. "Consider this a warning," Principal Weston said finally. "The next incident will have consequences. Understood?" "Yes, sir," both boys replied, though Chase's eyes held defiance. In the hallway, outside, Brent ran a hand through his hair. "That was close." "It was nothing," Chase dismissed. "Empty threats. My father would have his job if he tried anything real." "Maybe we should cool it for a while," Brent suggested. "This is getting out of hand." Chase turned on him. "Getting cold feet? Fine. Logan and I can handle this ourselves." As they rounded the corner, they nearly collided with Sammy, who was hunched over a tablet, apparently absorbed in coding. "Watch. Where you're going, freak," Chase snapped. Sammy didn't respond, his expression unchanged as he continued down the hall. Neither boy noticed the small device attached to the underside of his tablet, recording their every word. Later that afternoon, Yasmin found herself in an unexpected conversation with Mr. Bennett, a substitute PE teacher who had taken over for Coach Wilson that week. "James," Mr. Bennett repeated, glancing at his clipboard. "Amara James. That's the blind student, correct?" "Yes," Yasmin confirmed, wondering where this was going. "I noticed her movement patterns during class. Very controlled, very precise." He hesitated. "Does she have martial arts training by any chance?" Yasmin blinked in surprise. I'm not sure." "Why?" "Just curious," Mr. Bennett replied casually. "I used to compete in tournaments. You develop an eye for certain postures, certain ways of moving. She carries herself like someone with training." Yasmin made a non-committal sound, but her mind was racing, connecting dots that had been scattered before her all along. That evening, Chase, Logan, and Brent gathered in Chase's expansive bedroom, the walls adorned with sports trophies and framed photos of his family with various politicians and celebrities. "We need to settle this once and for all," Chase declared. "The girl is faking and I'm going to prove it." "How?" Logan asked, sprawled on Chase's leather couch. "A test." Chase's smile was cold. Something that would terrify any blind person but wouldn't faze someone who can actually see. "Like what?" Brent asked warily. "A mugging," Chase announced. "Fake, obviously. We wear masks, jump her near the park after she leaves that strip mall she goes to every Tuesday. If she's really blind, she'll be scared, call for help. If she's faking, this is insane," Brent protested. "That's assault." "Only if we actually touch her," Chase argued. "We just surround her, demand her money, see how she reacts." Logan grinned. "I'm in." Brent looked between them, then reluctantly nodded. "Fine, but no touching, and we bail at the first sign of trouble, the saw." Following Tuesday, Amara finished her training session at Park's dojo later than usual. The sky had darkened, and streetlights illuminated her path as she made her way toward the bus stop. Her cane tapped rhythmically against the sidewalk, though she hardly needed it in this familiar territory. As she passed the small park that separated the strip mall from the residential area, she heard it, the subtle shuffle of feet trying to move quietly, the controlled breathing of people attempting to remain undetected. 3 distinct patterns, familiar even through their attempts at disguise. She continued walking, giving no indication that she had noticed anything unusual. When the footsteps quickened behind her, she allowed herself a small, private smile. "Hey!" a voice called out, artificially deepened. "Stop right there!" Amara paused, turning her head slightly. 3 masked figures emerged from the shadows, surrounding her in a loose triangle. Chase, directly in front of her, wore a ski mask and had lowered his voice to a growl. "Give us your wallet and phone, and you won't get hurt." Amara tilted her head as if confused. "I don't have a wallet, just bus fare." "Then give us that," Logan demanded, stepping closer. "I need it to get home," Amara replied calmly. "That's not our problem," Chase said, reaching toward her arm. What happened next occurred so quickly that none of the boys had time to react. As Chase's hand approached Amara's sleeve, she pivoted smoothly, capturing his wrist and using his own momentum to flip him over her hip. He landed hard on his back, the impact knocking the wind from his lungs. Logan rushed forward, only to be met with a precise strike to his solar plexus that left him doubled over, gasping for air. Brent, witnessing his friend's swift defeat, backed, away with his hands raised. "I don't want any trouble," he stammered. "Then you shouldn't have followed me," Amara replied, her voice deadly calm. Logan struggled to his feet, pulling Chase up with him. "This isn't over," Chase wheezed, though the threat sounded hollow coming from someone who could barely stand. "Actually, it is," Amara said. "And Chase, your cologne gives you away. Might want to consider something less distinctive for your next mugging." The boys froze at the mention of Chase's name. "That's right," Amara continued. "I know exactly who you are, all 3 of you, and now you know something about me too." They backed away, then turned and ran, Chase limping slightly from his hard landing. Amara resumed her walk to the bus stop, her composure unshaken. When her phone rang, she answered it with her usual calm. "Hey, Yasmin." "How was training?" Yasmin asked. "Eventful," Amara replied. After a moment's hesitation, she added, "I think it's time I told you something. Can you meet me at my house tomorrow? Before school?" The next morning, Yasmin sat on Amara's bed trying to process what she had just heard. "So you've been training in karate since you were 9? And you're a black belt?" Amara nodded, her dark glasses set aside, revealing eyes that stared sightlessly ahead. "I started after I lost my vision. My dad thought it would help with my confidence and spatial awareness. But why keep it a secret?" "It wasn't a secret." "Exactly, just private," Amara shrugged. "But after last night, that's changed." "Last night? What happened last night?" Amara described the encounter with Chase and his friends. As she spoke, Yasmin's expression shifted from shock to admiration. "So that's why Mr. Bennett asked if you had martial arts training. He noticed your movements in PE." "Probably," Amara agreed. "Trained people can recognize other trained people." "And you really took down all 3 of them?" "I stopped hiding it the moment they crossed the line," Amara said simply. "There's a difference between enduring petty bullying and defending yourself from physical threat." Across town, Chase sat in his room, an ice pack pressed to his bruised shoulder, replaying the previous night's events in his mind. The girl had moved with impossible speed and precision, had known exactly who they were despite their disguises, had defeated them without breaking a sweat. His phone buzzed with a text from Logan. "We need to talk about what happened." Before he could reply, another text came in, this one from a number he didn't recognize. "I know what you did last night, and I have proof." Chase stared at the screen, a chill running through him. He tried to call the number, but it went straight to voicemail. By the time school started, Chase had convinced himself the text was a bluff. No one had witnessed their failed mugging, and surely Amara wouldn't have recorded it somehow. But as he walked through the halls, he noticed students watching him, some with undisguised curiosity, others with barely concealed smirks. In first period, he found a note taped to his desk. "How's the back feeling, tough guy?" Between classes, he cornered Logan at his locker. "Did you tell anyone about last night?" "Are you crazy?" Logan hissed. "Of course not." "Then how do people know?" Logan shook his head. "I don't know, man, but I'm done with this. That girl is not someone we should be messing with." Chase refused to accept defeat so easily. During lunch, he stationed himself near the entrance to the cafeteria, watching for Amara. When she entered, tapping her cane before her, he approached with deliberate steps. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "I don't think we have anything to discuss," Amara replied, continuing past him. Chase followed, lowering his voice. "How did you do that? Last night? How did you know it was us?" Amara paused, turning slightly, toward him. "You're asking the wrong questions, Chase." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You're fixated on how I defended myself. You should be asking why I needed to." Before Chase could respond, Sammy appeared beside them, his expression unreadable, as always. "Amara, I need to show you something," he said without greeting. "Yasmin too." In an empty classroom, Sammy placed his tablet on a desk and pressed play. The screen displayed an audio waveform, and the voices of Chase, Logan, and Brent filled the room, planning their fake mugging, admitting to previous pranks, discussing how to avoid consequences. "I've been recording them," Sammy explained. 27 incidents of targeted harassment, 14 explicit admissions of guilt, 8 instances of destroying or tampering with school property. Yasmin stared at him. "How?" "Microtransmitters. I placed them in their usual meeting spots. The library corner, Chase's locker, the bench behind the gym." Sammy shrugged as if this were completely normal behavior. "I calculated a 97.3% probability that they would continue escalating their behavior. The logical response was to gather evidence." Amara's expression softened. "Sammy, that's incredible." It's just pattern recognition, he replied, though a hint of pride colored his voice. They're very predictable. What are you going to do with this? Yasmin asked, gesturing to the tablet. Amara considered for a moment. For now, nothing. They know I can defend myself physically. Let's see if that's enough to end this. But as the day progressed, it became clear that Chase was not prepared to surrender. His humiliation had transformed into obsession. Between classes, Yasmin spotted him watching Amara from a distance, studying her movements with calculating intensity. After school, Chase's silver Audi idled across the street from Park's dojo. He sat alone, watching as students in white GIs filed in for afternoon classes. "What are you doing here?" Amara's voice came from his open passenger window, startling him so badly he hit the horn. "Jesus," Chase gasped, hand over his heart. "How did you—" "Your car has a distinctive engine sound," Amara replied matter-of-factly. "What do you want, Chase?" For once, his usual arrogance deserted him. I was just spying on me? Trying to figure out how the blind girl kicked your ass?" Chase's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You're not what you claim to be." "I've never claimed to be anything other than what I am," Amara countered. "You're the one who made assumptions." She turned and walked toward the dojo entrance, leaving Chase staring after her, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Inside, Sensei Park was waiting, his stern expression softening slightly as Amara entered. "You're troubled," he observed. "The situation at school is evolving," Amara admitted. Sensei Park nodded thoughtfully. "The boy in the car outside, one of your tormentors?" "The ringleader," Amara confirmed, "and now he knows your strength." "Yes. Then be prepared," Sensei Park warned. "When the weak discover they cannot defeat you directly, they look for other ways to attack." Later that evening, James Marshall sat in his home office reviewing the audio files Sammy had shared with him at Amara's request. "This is more than enough for a harassment complaint," he told his daughter. "Possibly even criminal charges." "I don't want to escalate this publicly," Amara replied. "Not yet." Her father studied her thoughtfully. "You've shown remarkable restraint." "I learned from the best," she said with a small smile. A notification chimed on her specially configured phone. "Text from Yasmin," the automated voice announced. Amara touched the screen, allowing the voice reader to recite the message. "Chase's lawyer father just left the principal's office. Looks serious. Call me." The morning air held a peculiar tension as Amara arrived at school the following day. Students clustered in tight groups, conversations hushing as she passed. The usual background noise of teenage social life felt muted, expectant. Yasmin intercepted her at the front entrance, pulling her aside with urgent hands. "It's bad," she whispered. "Chase's father came in yesterday with his legal team. They're claiming harassment and defamation." "Against who?" Amara asked, though she already knew the answer. "You. And Sammy, for the recordings. They're saying it's illegal surveillance, invasion of privacy." Yasmin's voice trembled slightly. "Principal Weston is caught in the middle. The Williams family basically owns half the board." Amara absorbed this, her face revealing nothing. "Where's Sammy?" "Computer lab. He's been there since dawn, backing up his evidence to secure servers." Yasmin hesitated. "Amara, they're saying you assaulted Chase and his friends, that you lured them to the park and attacked them unprovoked." A faint smile touched Amara's lips. "Of course they are." Throughout the morning, the atmosphere grew increasingly strained. In language arts, Ms. Elridge watched Amara with unconcealed nervousness, as if expecting her to launch into a martial arts demonstration at any moment. During the break, a school security officer stood conspicuously in the hallway, his eyes tracking Amara's movements. By lunchtime, Yasmin was beside herself with worry. "This is insane. How can they twist everything around like this?" "Money," Amara replied simply. "Power, the usual. But we have evidence. Sammy's recordings, which may be inadmissible if they were obtained illegally," Amara pointed out. Chase's father knows exactly what he's doing. Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of Brent, hovering awkwardly at their table. The cafeteria quieted, dozens of eyes watching the unexpected interaction. "Can I talk to you?" He asked Amara, his usual swagger replaced by uncharacteristic hesitance. "Of course," Amara replied. Brent slid into the seat across from her, keeping his voice low. "Look, this has gone too far. I didn't sign up for lawyers and false accusations." "Then why are you here?" Yasmin asked skeptically. "Because I'm done being Chase's puppet." Brent ran a hand through his hair. "They found pot in my locker yesterday. I'm suspended from the basketball team pending investigation. And you think Chase planted it?" Amara asked. "I know he did. It's what he does when people don't fall in line." Brent leaned forward. "Logan's been benched too. Failed drug test. Except he doesn't do drugs." "What are you saying?" Yasmin pressed. "I'm saying Chase is scorching the earth. Anyone who might contradict his version of events is being systematically neutralized." Brent looked directly at Amara. "He's obsessed with taking you down, and he doesn't care who gets caught in the crossfire." After Brent left, Yasmin shook, her head in disbelief. "Do you believe him?" "Yes," Amara said. "Fear makes people honest." That afternoon, Amara received a summons to Principal Weston's office. As she navigated the familiar route, she sensed the presence of someone following her. Not Chase or his friends, but someone with a heavier tread. Security, most likely. The principal's office smelled of coffee and anxiety. Amara detected 3 people in the room. Principal Weston, whose nervous finger-tapping she recognized immediately. A woman whose perfume carried notes of expensive sandalwood, and a man who smelled of cologne and authority. "Ms. James," Principal Weston began, "this is Mr. Williams, Chase's father, and Ms. Harrington, the school board's legal counsel." "A pleasure," Amara said neutrally. "Let's dispense with pleasantries." Richard Williams' voice was smooth, practiced, a lawyer's voice. "We're here to discuss a series of troubling incidents." "I'm listening," Amara replied. "My son and his friends were assaulted near Oakwood Park on Tuesday evening. They've identified you as their attacker." The words were delivered with clinical precision. "Additionally, they've been subjected to illegal surveillance by your friend Samuel Chen. These are serious matters." "Self-defense is not assault, Mr. Williams," Amara countered calmly. "And as for the surveillance, I have no knowledge of its legality or lack thereof." A blind girl claiming self-defense against 3 athletic young men? The skepticism in his voice was palpable. "That's a difficult narrative to sell." "Not if the blind girl has a black belt in karate," Amara replied evenly. A moment of silence followed this revelation. "Even if that were true," Ms. Harrington interjected, "it doesn't explain why you were in that location at that time, or why you'd immediately resort to violence." "I train at Park's dojo every Tuesday and Thursday. It's on my way home," Amara explained. "As for resorting to violence, I responded appropriately to 3 masked individuals threatening me after dark." Principal Weston cleared his throat. "Miss, James, these are very serious accusations from both sides. Without clear evidence—" "Oh, we have evidence," Mr. Williams interrupted. "Security camera footage from a nearby business shows my son and his friends walking peacefully through the park when Ms. James approached them." Amara's eyebrows rose slightly. "Interesting. Does this footage show them wearing ski masks, or attempting to rob me?" "The footage is inconclusive on those details," Ms. Harrington admitted reluctantly. "How convenient," Amara murmured. The meeting concluded with thinly veiled threats of legal action against both Amara and the school. As she left the office, Amara heard Mr. Williams' parting words to Principal Weston. "This situation will be resolved, one way or another. My family's contributions to this institution depend on it." Outside, Yasmin was waiting, her face tight with concern. "What happened?" "Exactly what you'd expect," Amara replied. "Intimidation, selective evidence, implied threats." "What are we going to do?" Before Amara could answer, her phone buzzed with a text. The automated voice announced, "Message from Sensei Park, dojo emergency. Come immediately. The scene at Park's dojo was one of devastation. Windows smashed, equipment scattered, walls defaced with spray paint. The pungent smell of paint and broken plaster filled the air as Amara stood in the doorway, her hand tight around her cane. Sensei Park moved through the wreckage, his normally impassive face lined with quiet anger. This happened during lunch hour. No witnesses. Amara ran her fingers over a nearby wall, feeling the raised edges of crude spray paint. What does it say? Sensei Park hesitated. Nothing worth repeating. Tell me, Amara insisted. Racial slurs, and blind fighters not welcome. His voice was flat, controlled. Specific enough to know who it's targeting. Amara nodded slowly. I'm sorry this happened to your dojo, Sensei. A dojo is not walls and equipment, he replied. It is spirit, discipline, community. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Nevertheless, I must suspend classes until repairs are made. Insurance investigations, police reports. It will take time. That evening, after her father had gone to bed, Amara slipped out to the backyard. The night air was cool against her skin as she moved to the center of the lawn. Removing her dark glasses, she tied a blindfold over her eyes, a ritual that had become second nature over the years. Beginning slowly, she moved through the katas, her body flowing from one position to the next with fluid precision. As her muscles warmed, she increased her speed, adding complex combinations, her movements a perfect dance in the darkness. This was how she had started, alone, blindfolded, learning to trust her body's awareness over her lost sight. Each punch, each kick, each block was a declaration. I am not diminished. The following morning, Grafton Academy buzzed with news of another scandal. A teacher's aide had discovered Sammy hacking into the school's media system in the early hours. He had been escorted off campus, his laptop confiscated. They're suspending him pending investigation, Yasmin told Amara between classes. Chase is systematically eliminating everyone who stands with you. Amara's face hardened slightly. This ends now. What are you going to do? Something I should have done from the beginning. Amara pulled out her phone. Call Dad. That afternoon, James Marshall arrived at Grafton Academy for the second time. That week, this time he wasn't alone. With him was a woman in her early 30s dressed in a crisp suit, her natural hair styled in a professional updo. Who's that? Yasmin whispered as they watched from the library window. Sarah Jenkins, Amara replied. Civil rights attorney, specializes in discrimination cases, and my godmother. Principal Weston's face was ashen as he emerged from his office an hour later, James Marshall and Attorney Jenkins following with expressions of grim satisfaction. That evening, Amara sat in her bedroom with her father, the weight of recent events hanging between them. You could have come to me sooner, he said quietly. I wanted to handle it myself, Amara replied. Some battles you shouldn't have to fight alone. He sighed heavily. When your mother died, Dad, don't. No, you need to hear this. His voice was gentle but firm. When your mother died protecting you in that robbery, I blamed myself for not being there, for not stopping it. Amara's fingers tightened around her cane. I was the one who wanted to go to that store. If I hadn't begged her, stop. Her father reached across, taking her hand. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't mine. It was the fault of the man who chose violence that day. Tears gathered at the corners of Amara's sightless eyes. I couldn't see him coming. I couldn't warn her. You were 9 years old, Amara. His voice broke slightly. And even then, you tried to push her out of the way. The police told me that you moved toward the danger, not away from it. They sat in silence for a moment, the shared pain of that day washing over them anew. That's why I enrolled you in Sensei Park's classes, he continued finally. Not just for self-defense, but because I saw something in you. A need to protect, to stand up. The same quality your mother had. Amara wiped her eyes. I miss her. Every day, he agreed. But she'd be so proud of the young woman you've become. He squeezed her hand. Now about this charity gala the school is hosting. I'm not sure I should attend after everything that's happened. Oh, I think you definitely should, her father replied, a new resolve in his voice. In fact, I have an idea about that. The next morning, a notification appeared on the school's digital bulletin board announcing the annual charity gala, a black tie event attended by students, parents, donors, and board members. This year's theme, Seeing Beyond Limitations. In the cafeteria, Chase read the announcement with a calculating smile. Perfect, he murmured to Logan. It's all coming together. What is? Logan asked warily. The final act, Chase replied. One public humiliation to end them all. What he didn't see was Amara entering the cafeteria, wearing not her usual dark glasses but her traditional black GI beneath her open school blazer, the uniform of a karate black belt visible for all to see. The Grafton Academy Annual Charity Gala transformed the school's ordinary gymnasium into a glittering wonderland. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting prismatic light across the polished floor. A string quartet played softly from a corner stage, while waiters in crisp uniforms circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres. Amara stood at the entrance, her father beside her. She wore a formal navy blue dress, elegant and simple, with her hair swept into an intricate updo. Dark glasses shielded her eyes, and her white cane rested in her hand. Quite the production, James Marshall commented, his voice low. You're sure about this? Completely, Amara replied. Yasmin and Sammy are already inside. And you're ready for whatever Chase has planned? A small smile curved Amara's lips. More than he is. Principal Weston approached, nervousness evident in his hurried steps. Ms. James, Mr. Marshall, so pleased you could attend. His voice carried forced cheerfulness. We have a special table reserved for you near the front. How thoughtful, Amara said, allowing herself to be guided to the designated table. As they moved through the crowd, hushed conversations followed in their wake. The events of the past weeks had made Amara something of a school celebrity, opinions divided between those who admired her resilience and those who believed Chase's version of events. Yasmin joined them at the table, leaning close to whisper, Chase looks way too smug. He's been checking the media setup all evening. Any sign of Sammy? Amara asked. Not yet. He said he needed to finalize some technical details. Across the room, Chase stood with his parents, the picture of privileged perfection in his tailored tuxedo. His father, Richard Williams, commanded attention from the board members surrounding him, while his mother, Elizabeth, draped in diamonds, surveyed the room with practiced disinterest. She actually showed up, Chase muttered, eyes fixed on Amara. Of course she did, his father replied smoothly. Our invitation was quite specific. Missing it would have seemed suspicious. Everything's ready? Chase asked. Richard Williams placed a hand on his son's shoulder. The slideshow is scheduled for 8:30, right before the donation announcements. It will be quite illuminating for everyone. What neither of them noticed was the slight figure of Sammy slipping through a side door, a tablet clutched to his chest. Queen. Precisely 8:30, Principal Weston took the stage, tapping a microphone for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with our donation announcements, the Williams family has prepared a special presentation highlighting the importance of honesty and integrity in our academic community. The lights dimmed. Chase's smile widened as he glanced toward Amara's table. The large screen behind the principal flickered to life. For a moment, the image seemed to freeze, digital artifacts distorting the display. Then, instead of the carefully edited slideshow Chase had prepared, the screen showed security footage of the school hallway. Chase appeared on screen, huddled with Logan and Brent. The blind girl won't know what hit her, his recorded voice announced. I've got the fake braille cards ready. She'll make a complete fool of herself. The footage changed to another clip, Chase hacking into the school system, pulling up Amara's personal records. Her dad's a security guard, he laughed. They can barely afford the application fee, let alone tuition. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elizabeth Williams clutched her husband's arm, whispering fiercely. Richard's face had gone deathly pale. The footage continued. More clips, More damning evidence. Chase placing tacks on Amara's chair. Chase instructing Logan to throw the ball at Amara in gym class. Chase planning the mugging in the park. Finally, the most devastating clip appeared. Chase on the phone with someone, laughing. "Yeah, we trashed the dojo. Left a nice message too. Let's see how the blind ninja handles that." The screen went black. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the sound of a chair scraping back as Chase bolted to his feet. That's fake," he shouted. "They edited that footage." Principal Weston stood frozen on stage, microphone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. Board members exchanged shocked glances. Parents murmured in horrified disbelief. Richard Williams recovered first, striding toward the stage with practiced authority. "This is an outrageous violation of privacy," he announced. "Clearly fabricated to discredit my son. I demand this presentation be stopped immediately." But the crowd's attention had shifted. Amara had risen from her seat and was making her way toward the stage, her cane tapping a steady rhythm against the floor. As she reached the steps, she removed her dark glasses, revealing her unseeing eyes to the audience. Then, with deliberate movements, she unbuttoned her blazer and let it slide from her shoulders, revealing the black GI and belt beneath her formal attire. "My name is Amara James," she began, her clear voice carrying through the silent room. "I lost my sight when I was 9 years old. That same year, I began training in karate under Sensei Park." She folded her cane, tucking it into her belt. "You thought my blindness made me weak, but it helped me see the truth about all of you." Her words hung in the air, powerful in their simplicity. "I came to this school hoping for education, for opportunity. Instead, I found that money can buy immunity from consequences, that adults will look the other way if the price is right, that cruelty is considered leadership." She turned slightly, addressing the entire room now. "But I also found friends willing to stand up for what's right. I found courage in unexpected places, and I found that sometimes the only way to change a broken system is to break it yourself." A girl in the back of the room began to cry, the sound cutting through the silence. Others shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet each other's eyes. "The videos you just saw are real," Amara continued. "Every word, every action, all authenticated and time-stamped. Copies have been provided to the police, the school board, and several news outlets." Richard Williams surged forward. "This is defamation. My lawyers will—" "Your lawyers will have a difficult time," interrupted a new voice. Sarah Jenkins had taken the stage, professional and commanding in her presence. "Especially with the additional evidence of witness tampering and destruction of property. Mr. Williams, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully." The principal finally found his voice. I think we need to adjourn this evening's events to address these serious allegations. The board will convene immediately in my office." As the stunned crowd began to disperse, several parents approached Amara, some apologetic, others asking questions. Teachers huddled in corners whispering urgently. Ms. Elridge slipped quietly, out a side door, her resignation letter already drafted in her purse. Chase, Logan, and Brent had vanished during the commotion, but their parents remained, faced with the consequences of their son's actions. "Is it true?" Elizabeth Williams demanded of her husband. "Did you know about any of this?" His silence was answer enough. Outside, in the school parking lot, Chase kicked the tire of his luxury car, face contorted with rage. "This isn't over," he seethed. "She wants war, she'll get it." Logan leaned against the car, his usual bravado deflated. "Dude, it's over. We're done." "We're done when I say we're done," Chase snapped. "My father will fix this. He always does." But, as they drove away from the school, Chase's phone buzzed with notifications. His social media accounts flooded with messages, the video clips already going viral. By morning, their names would be trending for all the wrong reasons. Amara's return home that night was quiet, the emotional toll of the evening settling over her like a heavy cloak. Her father made hot chocolate, an old comfort from her childhood. "Chakir did well," he said simply. "It doesn't feel like a victory," Amara admitted. The best ones rarely do. He reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Get some rest. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. She had just changed into her pajamas when her phone buzzed with an automated news alert. Breaking vandalism and break-in at local residence. The address was her own. The house was in disarray. Furniture overturned. Amara's training equipment destroyed. Windows broken. But worst of all was the crude message spray-painted on the living room wall and the sight of her father, sitting in an ambulance with a bandage around his head. "Dad!" Amara rushed to his side, hands reaching for him with unerring accuracy. "I'm all right," he assured her, though the pain in his voice betrayed him. "Just a glancing blow when I surprised them." A police officer stood nearby, notebook in hand. "Mr. Marshall says there were 3 intruders. He confronted them and one struck him with what appeared to be a baseball bat before they fled." "Did you see their faces?" Amara asked her father. "Masks," he replied grimly. "But one of them was wearing a Letterman jacket, Grafton Academy colors." The officer continued. "The message on your wall. It's threatening in nature. Stay blind, girl. Given recent events at the school, we're taking this very seriously." "They destroyed my GI," Amara said quietly. "Cut it to pieces." Later that night, Amara sat beside her father's hospital bed, his steady breathing the only sound in the room. The doctors had insisted on keeping him overnight for observation. A mild concussion, they said. Nothing too serious, but better safe than sorry. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from Yasmin, Sammy, and even Sensei Park. News of the break-in had spread quickly through their small circle. "You should go home, get some rest," her father said, stirring from his half-sleep. "I'm not leaving you here," Amara replied firmly. He reached for her hand. "This pain, forge it into something they can't stop." The words echoed in her mind as she finally dozed off in the uncomfortable hospital chair. Morning brought a flood of developments. The local news had picked up the story of the charity gala scandal, running it alongside coverage of the break-in at the Marshall home. Social media exploded with competing narratives, some portraying Amara as a victim of privileged bullying, others questioning her role in the escalating conflict. By noon, Yasmin called with news from school. "They've called an emergency disciplinary hearing for tomorrow," she reported. "Chase's father has hired some high-profile lawyer from the city. They're trying to flip the narrative, claiming you've been systematically targeting Chase and his friends, that you're militant and dangerous." "Not surprising," Amara replied, her voice tired but resolute. "There's more," Yasmin continued reluctantly. "My scholarship is being reviewed. Someone accused me of helping Sammy hack the school network." Amara's grip tightened on the phone. "They can't do that." "They can if they want to," Yasmin said, her voice catching. "My visa status is tied to that scholarship, Amara. If they revoke it, they're trying to isolate me," Amara realized. "Cut off my support system." After hanging up, Amara tried to reach Sammy but got no response. It wasn't until evening that she finally located him, sitting alone on a park bench near the school, hunched over and uncharacteristically still. "Sammy?" she called, approaching carefully. "How did you find me?" he asked, his voice flat. "Process of elimination. You weren't at home, the library, or the computer lab." She sat beside him, noting the faint smell of smoke. "What happened?" "They threatened my parents' business," he said quietly. "Anonymous calls saying they'd report health code violations, tax issues. Then someone broke into my locker and destroyed my backup drives." He held out a charred piece of plastic, all that remained of one of his recording devices. "They scared me," he admitted, his voice shaking slightly. Amara's hand found his shoulder. "It's okay to be scared. What matters is what you do next." "I don't know what to do next," Sammy confessed. "I'm not good with these situations. The variables are too unpredictable." "Then we figure it out together," Amara said firmly. The following morning, the disciplinary hearing convened in the school's conference room. Principal Weston presided, flanked by 3 board members. Chase sat with his parents and their attorney, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit who radiated confident disdain. Amara was accompanied by her father, still sporting a bandage, and Sarah Jenkins, whose calm professionalism provided a stark contrast to the Williams' aggressive legal posture. This hearing has been called to address the serious allegations raised at the charity gala. Principal Weston began, his voice strained. Both sides will have an opportunity to present their case. Chase's attorney rose first. My client has been the victim of a calculated campaign of harassment and defamation. Ms. James, despite her condition, has demonstrated hostile and militant behavior, culminating in a physical assault on my client and his friends. He presented a carefully curated narrative. Chase as the well-meaning student concerned about a struggling classmate, Amara as the defensive outsider who responded with disproportionate aggression. The doctored security footage from near the park was offered as evidence. Furthermore, the attorney continued, Ms. James has enlisted other students in her vendetta. Samuel Chen conducted illegal surveillance, while Yasmin Khoury aided in distributing manipulated media to damage my client's reputation. When it was Sarah Jenkins's turn, she approached the situation with methodical precision. The narrative, presented by the Williams family, is quite frankly a work of fiction, she began. The evidence speaks for itself. She presented not only Sammy's recordings but statements from other students who had witnessed Chase's bullying behavior over the years. Most damning was a surprise witness, Brent Cooper, who had decided to break ranks. Chase has been doing this for years, Brent testified, avoiding eye contact with his former friend. Not just to Amara, to anyone he sees as weak or different. As the hearing progressed, a commotion in the hallway interrupted the proceedings. The door opened to reveal an unexpected visitor, a distinguished black woman in judicial robes. Judge Harris, Principal Weston said, rising in surprise. This is an unexpected honor. I'm not here in my judicial capacity, she replied, taking a seat at the back of the room. I'm here as an alumna of Grafton Academy, class of '85, and as someone who experienced similar treatment during my time here. Her presence changed the atmosphere in the room. Judge Olivia Harris was not only an esteemed alumna, but a significant donor and respected community figure. While I cannot intervene in these proceedings, she continued, I can inform you that I've been in contact with several other former students who experienced bullying and discrimination at this institution. We are prepared to speak publicly about the systemic failures that have allowed such behavior to flourish. Richard Williams paled visibly. The board members exchanged alarmed glances. The hearing continued for another hour, with testimony and evidence mounting against Chase and his enablers. By the end, even his father's considerable influence couldn't stem the tide of accountability. The board will deliberate and render a decision by tomorrow morning, Principal Weston announced, looking years older than when the hearing began. As they filed out of the conference room, Amara was approached by a girl she didn't recognize, a sophomore, whose voice trembled slightly as she spoke. My sister went here 2 years ago, she said quietly. Brent and his friends bullied her so badly she hurt herself. I just wanted you to know there are a lot of people grateful for what you're doing. That evening, as news of the hearing spread through the student body, Sammy made a discovery that would change everything. Hidden in the school's computer network was a private chat server where Chase and other privileged students had been documenting their pranks for years, complete with photos, videos, and detailed accounts of their victims. It's all here, Sammy told Amara over the phone, his voice regaining its usual intensity. Years of evidence, dozens of students targeted, and the administrators who were informed but did nothing. Send it all to Sarah, Amara instructed, and Judge Harris. The system was beginning to buckle under the weight of its own corruption. Throughout the evening, Amara's phone buzzed with updates. The principal had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Yasmin's scholarship had been reinstated with a formal apology. Sammy had been cleared of all accusations. But as the institutional structures crumbled, Chase's personal vendetta only intensified. The next morning, as Amara made her way to the gym for a mandatory assembly, she sensed someone following her through the empty hallway. The footsteps were familiar, confident, entitled, angry. We need to talk, Chase said, stepping in front of her. I don't think we have anything left to discuss, Amara replied calmly. You've ruined everything, he hissed, his voice tight with fury. My father's reputation, my future college applications. You had no right. Your actions ruined those things, Amara corrected. I just made sure everyone could see the truth. Chase stepped closer, invading her space. You think you're so special with your little karate tricks and your blindness act? Nobody makes a fool of me. His hand shot out, grabbing her arm. It was the last mistake he would make at Grafton Academy. In one fluid motion, Amara twisted free, captured his wrist and used his own momentum to flip him onto his back. Before he could recover, she had him pinned, her knee pressing lightly but firmly against his chest. You're done, she whispered, her face inches from his. It's over, and for the first time, looking up at the blind girl who had systematically dismantled his world of privilege and protection, Chase Williams finally understood what true power looked like. The morning of the school tribunal dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm of controversy swirling around Grafton Academy. News vans lined the street outside, reporters clutching microphones and coffee cups as they delivered updates to morning broadcasts. We're live outside Grafton Academy, where a final disciplinary tribunal will determine the fate of several students, involved in what some are calling a systematic bullying campaign. Inside, the school auditorium had been transformed into a makeshift hearing room. Rows of chairs faced a long table where the newly appointed interim principal, Dr. Eleanor Wright, sat alongside 4 board members and Judge Harris, who had been invited as an independent observer. Students filed in quietly, the usual teenage chatter replaced by hushed, serious conversations. The events of the past weeks had transformed the school's atmosphere, replacing casual cruelty with somber reflection. Amara arrived with her father, Sarah Jenkins, Yasmin, and Sammy, a united front as they took their seats in the front row. Across the aisle, Chase sat with his parents and their attorney, his usual swagger diminished but not entirely gone. Logan hunched beside them, while Brent sat separately with his parents, having chosen to break ranks. The purpose of today's tribunal, Dr. Wright began, her voice firm and clear, is to determine appropriate consequences for the incidents that have come to light and to establish a path forward for our community. This is not a court of law, but we will observe formal procedures to ensure fairness. What followed was 3 hours of testimony, evidence, and cross-examination. Yasmin spoke eloquently about the daily indignities Amara had endured. Sammy presented his evidence methodically, his unique mind perfect for cataloging the patterns of harassment. When Amara's turn came, she rose without her cane, navigating to the witness chair with practiced ease. Ms. James, Dr. Wright said, please share your experience in your own words. Amara's testimony was measured, devoid of self-pity or vengeance. She spoke of her first days at Grafton, the initial encounters with Chase and his friends, the escalating harassment, and her own responses. I chose patience over confrontation, she explained. Not out of fear, but because my sensei taught me that true strength lies in restraint. I only defended myself physically when directly threatened. Chase's attorney attempted to paint her as the aggressor, suggesting her martial arts training made her intimidating and dangerous. Is it intimidating to be prepared to defend yourself? Amara countered. Or is it intimidating to target someone you perceive as vulnerable, to gather friends to help you harass them, to vandalize property, and break into their home? The attorney had no effective response. The most surprising testimony came from Ms. Elridge, who had returned specifically for the tribunal despite her resignation. I failed in my duty as an educator, she admitted, her voice shaking. I witnessed the harassment and did nothing, fearing repercussions from influential parents. I was complicit in a system that protected the privileged at the expense of the vulnerable. Her candor sent ripples through the audience. Several other teachers exchanged guilty glances, recognizing their own similar choices. The hidden witness, however, was one no one had anticipated. A school custodian named Frank Barnes approached the microphone, his weathered hands clutching a small notebook. I've worked at Grafton for 22 years, he began, and I've kept records of everything I've seen. Dates, times, incidents, the tacks on chairs, the vandalized lockers, the slurs written on bathroom walls that I was told to clean up quietly. He placed the notebook on the table. There's 15 years of documented bullying in there, and the names of every administrator who told me to keep quiet about it. By early afternoon, the tribunal reached its decision. Dr. Wright stood to deliver the verdict, her expression grave but determined. After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence, this tribunal finds that Chase Williams, Logan Taylor, and to a lesser extent, Brent Cooper, engaged in a persistent campaign of harassment targeting multiple students, most recently. Amara James, she paused, surveying the room. The consequences are as follows. Chase Williams and Logan Taylor are expelled from Grafton Academy, effective immediately. Their transcripts will reflect this disciplinary action. Richard Williams surged to his feet. This is outrageous. You can't. Mr. Williams, Dr. Wright cut him off. Your son's actions, and your own attempts to cover them up, have been thoroughly documented. If you wish to contest this decision, you're welcome to do so through proper legal channels. But be advised that the evidence will become public record. He sank back into his seat, face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Brent Cooper, Dr. Wright continued, in light of your cooperation and apparent remorse, you are suspended for the remainder of the semester. Upon return, you will be required to complete community service and participate in anti-bullying initiatives. She turned to address broader issues. Furthermore, Principal Weston has submitted his resignation, which the board has accepted. The school's disciplinary policies will undergo immediate review and revision. As the proceedings concluded, reporters swarmed outside, seeking comments from those involved. Richard Williams pushed through the crowd with his wife and son, ignoring questions as they hurried to their car. Amara, by contrast, agreed to a single interview with a journalist from the local public radio station. Do you consider yourself a hero? The reporter asked. No, Amara replied thoughtfully. I'm not a hero. I just refuse to stay silent. What would you say to other students facing similar situations? That they're not alone, even when it feels that way. That their worth isn't determined by how others treat them. And that sometimes standing up doesn't mean fighting back, it means standing firm. In the days that followed, the ripple effects of the tribunal spread through the community. Richard Williams resigned from the school board amid rumors of impending criminal charges for obstruction and witness tampering. Several parents withdrew their children from Grafton, unwilling to face the new era of accountability. But there were positive changes too. Work began to rebuild Sensei Park's dojo. Funded by community donations and volunteer labor, students from Grafton arrived on weekends to help clean up graffiti, replace windows, and repair equipment. One sunny Saturday, as Amara helped organize the dojo's equipment, Sensei Park approached her. When you are ready, he said, there is a place for you here, as an assistant instructor. Amara's face brightened with surprise. But I'm still a student myself. The best teachers never stop being students, he replied. You have something valuable to share, something beyond technique. The following Monday, Yasmin burst into the cafeteria, waving an envelope and practically glowing with excitement. I got it, she exclaimed, sliding into the seat beside Amara. Full scholarship to the medical prep program at Westlake Academy. Yasmin, that's amazing. Amara hugged her friend. You earned it. Actually, I didn't just earn it, Yasmin admitted. Judge Harris arranged it. She called it an investment in the future. Amara smiled. She's very good at recognizing potential. She mentioned you too, Yasmin added. Said there's a special scholarship committee meeting next week to discuss extraordinary circumstances. I think good things are coming your way. Later that afternoon, Sammy found them in the library, his usual reserved demeanor giving way to cautious excitement. My audio mapping device, he began without preamble. The one I designed for you. A nonprofit for blind veterans wants to develop it. They're offering a grant and mentorship. Sammy, that's incredible, Amara beamed. They said it could help people transition after losing their sight, he continued, his words coming faster than usual. I never considered the wider applications. It's gratifying. You deserve this, Amara told him. Your mind is a gift. As the semester progressed, the media attention around Grafton gradually subsided. The story made way for newer scandals. though occasional updates appeared about legal proceedings against the Williams family or policy changes at the school. One such update featured footage of Chase entering a juvenile detention facility, his face stunned and pale as he faced consequences perhaps for the first time in his life. Watching the news clip, Amara felt no satisfaction, only a quiet hope that he might learn something from the experience. In the privacy of her bedroom that evening, Amara stood before her mirror, a ritual she had maintained since losing her sight. She removed her dark glasses, then tied a blindfold over her eyes, a symbolic gesture connecting her to her first days of training. "You don't need sight to see what matters," she whispered to herself, a mantra that had carried her through her darkest moments. The next morning, a small package arrived for Amara. No return address, no note, just a plain envelope containing a single folded sheet of paper with a message written in Braille. "There are more like them. Are you ready?" Spring bloomed across the campus of Grafton Academy, bringing with it the promise of renewal. The past months had transformed the school in ways both visible and invisible. New leadership, new policies, and a new awareness that had taken root in the student body. As graduation approached, Dr. Wright extended an unexpected invitation to Amara. Would she deliver a speech at the ceremony? Though not a senior herself, her story had become intertwined with a pivotal moment in the school's history. "I'm not sure what I would say," Amara admitted when discussing it with her father. "The truth," he suggested simply. "It's always served you well." On graduation day, the auditorium overflowed with families, the excitement palpable as seniors prepared to transition to the next chapter of their lives. When Dr. Wright introduced Amara, a hush fell over the crowd. Amara approached the podium without her cane, having memorized the path during rehearsal. She wore her regular school uniform, but with her black belt visible at her waist, a symbol of both her discipline and her journey. "When I lost my sight at 9 years old," she began, "many people assumed my life would be limited by what I couldn't see. They defined me by what was lost, not by what remained or what could be gained." She paused, allowing her words to settle. "We all face moments of darkness, some literal like mine, others figurative. The question isn't whether darkness will come, but what we choose to do when it surrounds us." Her voice strengthened as she continued, sharing her experiences with rawness and vulnerability that held the audience captive. "Justice isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about standing firm when it would be easier to bend. Sometimes it's about speaking truth when silence offers comfort. And sometimes it's about forgiveness, not for the benefit of those who hurt us, but for our own freedom." As she concluded, the crowd remained silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. Students rose to their feet, then parents, then faculty, a standing ovation that acknowledged not just Amara's words, but the difficult journey they had all shared. The impact of Amara's story extended beyond Grafton Academy. In the months following graduation, a new program took shape, Sight Beyond Sight, dedicated to empowering students with disabilities through martial arts and mental resilience training. With seed funding from Judge Harris and several community organizations, the program launched at 3 local schools with plans to expand. Amara served as its first youth ambassador, working alongside Sensei Park to develop specialized training approaches. On a warm summer evening, Amara visited the newly rebuilt dojo for a special session. As students filed in, she recognized a mixture of familiar voices: Grafton students, community members, and even a few teachers. "Today," Sensei Park announced, "we will explore what it means to see with more than our eyes." The class began with blindfolds for everyone, creating an equal playing field where Amara's years of adapting became an advantage. She moved through the students, gently correcting stances, offering encouragement, sharing the techniques that had become second nature to her. "Use your ears," she instructed. "Feel the air move as your partner approaches. Listen to the rhythm of their breathing." From the sidelines, James Marshall watched with quiet pride. Beside him sat Sarah Jenkins and Judge Harris. Their conversation focused on expanding the program to underserved communities. "Your daughter is remarkable," Judge Harris observed. She's transformed her challenge into a platform for change. She gets that from her mother, James replied, his voice soft with memory. Later that week, Amara and her father made their annual visit to her mother's grave. The cemetery was peaceful, birds singing in the oak trees that provided dappled shade over the markers. Amara knelt beside the headstone, her fingers tracing the engraved name. Michelle Marshall, beloved wife and mother. Carefully, she removed her black belt and placed it on the stone. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "We turned something painful into something powerful." Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, his presence a steady comfort as always. "She would be so proud of you," he said. "Not just of what you've accomplished, but of who you've become." They sat in companionable silence, the breeze carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and summer flowers. After a time, Amara replaced her belt and they walked arm in arm back to the car. The following day brought a new challenge. Amara was invited to speak at Ridgemont High, a school in a neighboring district with reports of similar bullying issues. The principal had reached out after hearing about the changes at Grafton, hoping Amara's story might inspire both students and administration. As she prepared her notes in Braille, Amara felt a moment of hesitation. Was she ready to relive her experiences for a new audience? To potentially face resistance or skepticism? The invitation letter sat on her desk, a tangible reminder of how far the ripples of her actions had spread. After a moment's consideration, she folded it decisively and placed it in her bag. "Time to go," she said to herself. That afternoon, as Amara delivered her presentation to a gymnasium full of Ridgemont students, a small figure lingered at the back of the room. Emma Collins, a freshman who had been born blind, listened intently, as Amara described her journey from victim to advocate. When the formal presentation ended, and students clustered around Amara with questions, Emma stayed in her seat, gathering her courage. Finally, as the crowd thinned, she approached, her cane tapping a path forward. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. "My name is Emma. I'm blind too, and I've been having some problems here." Amara turned toward the voice, recognizing the familiar hesitation, the carefully neutral tone that masked deeper pain. "Hi, Emma," she replied warmly. "Would you like to tell me about it?" As Emma shared her experiences, Amara recognized the patterns all too well. The isolation, the well-intentioned exclusion, the lowered expectations. But she also heard something familiar in Emma's voice, the same quiet determination that had carried Amara through her own darkest days. "Have you ever thought about learning to defend yourself?" Amara asked when Emma finished. "I wouldn't know where to start," Emma admitted. Amara smiled. "That's exactly what I said when my dad first took me to the dojo." The next day, a new student joined the beginners class at Park's dojo. Emma stood nervously at the edge of the mat, listening to the sounds of practice around her. Amara approached, now in her role as assistant instructor. "Ready?" Emma nodded, uncertainly. "I'm scared I'll look stupid." "Everyone looks stupid at first," Amara assured her. "That's how you know you're learning." As they began the first basic forms, Amara felt a sense of completion, a circle closing as she passed on what had been given to her. The skills, yes, but more importantly, the confidence that came from discovering strength within perceived weakness. Weeks passed, and the new school year approached. Grafton Academy had transformed in subtle but significant ways. The halls still buzzed with teenage energy, but there was a new undercurrent of awareness, of accountability. On the first day back, Amara walked through the main entrance, her cane tapping a familiar rhythm against the floor. Students greeted her by name, some with respect, others with the casual friendliness of peers. As she navigated toward her locker, she sensed a presence beside her. Emma, who had recently transferred to Grafton with the help of a special scholarship, established in the wake of the previous year's events. "Nervous?" Amara asked. "Terrified," Emma admitted. "But ready." Amara nodded in understanding. "That's all any of us can be." Together they walked down the hallway, two blind girls with straight backs and lifted chins, their canes tapping in synchronized rhythm against the floor. Behind them, other students made way, not out of pity or discomfort, but with the natural respect afforded to those who had proven their strength. In her office, Dr. Wright watched through the window, a small smile playing at her lips. Change came slowly to institutions like Grafton, but it came nonetheless. One brave stand, one policy revision, one mind changed at a time. Amara's inner voice, so carefully cultivated through years of training and challenge, resonated with quiet certainty as she began this new chapter. You don't need eyes to see injustice. You just need the courage to stand against it. And in that moment, walking beside a girl who might have been herself a year earlier, Amara knew that courage, like knowledge, gained its true value when shared with others who needed it most. What would you fight for if the world tried to make you invisible? If Amara's journey moved you, tap that like button and subscribe for more stories that challenge what we think we see.